I was driving really fast down the street one day and a car was making a very dumb, illegal move, yet I wasn't prepared to stop. His car hit my car and my car wrapped around a telephone pole. It totally scared the hell out of me. The pole comes right behind me, a foot closer to me, and I would have been seriously hurt. At that moment, for a second, I went, maybe I should be more aware of what I'm doing and how I proceed forward. I met some of the closest friends through cars. I drove this '66 Mustang around for 5 years, as my best friend had an '89 IROC Camaro, and we drove around thinking we were the coolest kids in the block, and in reality, we were the dumbest, really. Because it became such an obsession then that I couldn't stop working every day just to spend money on this car to make it the thing I wanted it to be. So having that Mustang growing up as a child really meant a lot to me. I'm Nate Cali. I'm a commercial car editor. I drive a 1965 Fastback Ford Mustang. As a kid, I got to see so much. Living in California and seeing just a range of variety of cars, it just kind of started to come out naturally that I had an obsession of the way things would look. It felt like an emotion that I was hearing, and it grabbed my attention to really make me feel something for the first time. It was about the feeling and the design of cars that I constantly would point out to my family members as I would sit in a car. I really was passionate about finding something that matched my personality, which was probably aggressively way too loud and obnoxious for most of my neighbors and friends and family. But there was something about the Mustang that always had intrigued me as one of the best cars when it first was made. My first car was a 1966 Mustang. I bought it when I was 15 for $1,500. It was a bad idea. It didn't matter to me because I owned it, I loved it, it became a part of me. And then I spent probably 2 to 3 years breaking down every other week. It'd be 4 or 5 days of pure joy and 4 or 5 days of pure frustration. So there'd be times where I would start to drive the car, enjoy it, something would break, and then let it sit there for 2 or 3 weeks until I made enough money to actually figure out how to get it fixed or get the right part for it. I loved that car so much that it became my obsession. And for some reason, that urge and that scratch and that feel and that desire that what this car does for me has only grown exponentially. It drives me crazy, really, is what it does. So I went into college, but really what struck out the most was filmmaking, the passion of old car movies. In my 20s, I was able to focus a little bit more on that. I thought I was kind of done with cars for a moment. And with the filmmaking and going into advertisement, it kind of woke something up again. So 10 years ago, I went back on the search of finding another classic car. For me, it was then finding a great '65 Fastback. This one felt the most appropriate to me because it was a guy who owned it 30 years plus. I found it on a Craigslist ad in Arizona. I don't know what it was about this specific one, that seeing the car and then meeting this man and the story behind, it was almost impossible for him to sell it because he had an emotional connection to it as well. And I think it was hard for him to part ways with it because it had the memories that he grew up with. It had all these stories to go with it. But I think he wanted to see another chapter with it. There's a lot of cars that are bought and don't really become anything after that. But the purpose for me was about to fulfill this memory again and this thing that I knew that always brought happiness to me. The car is so hard to drive at first. This is a Mustang that it's the first year, so it's the smallest one. Don't get me wrong, this is not a pristine car when I first got it. It was a mess. It barely drove. I drove it for a while and it was great, but I was like, I'm not driving this back from Arizona to California. Everything needed to be fixed. It's ridiculous. We started obviously with doing the Willwood brakes. We updated the braking system, put better tires on it, the Bridgestone RE71s. And then we moved on to getting the engine working properly, getting better intake and carburetor, breathe better, get better gas for it. We moved on to getting a new camshaft. You just start pulling everything out of it and replacing internal parts, but retaining the actual original engine. That we wanted to take what we had and just give it more life, give it back what it originally had. In terms of interior, we took everything and we just did all black pony interior. Everything is very much what it was back in '65. I think the only updates we've ever done that is modern to it is the original radio has a Bluetooth behind it, so I can play music if I want to off my phone. Which is silly because I never played music enough in it, because once I get in it, it's the whole thing of the thoughts are getting cleared out. I guess then the biggest thing would be then taking what the existing body and paint was and kind of complementing what the original owner of it had. That blue with the white stripes. So I've kept that on the top of the car, but on the sides of it, you'll notice that there's no emblems, there's no extra white stripes or anything. So if you look at it from the side, it's a very clean, sleek look. When the second you walk up to it from the front or look from it from above, it's loud white stripes. It's weird that the car does something where it's almost like therapy. I don't know how to explain it, but like I just go through this other mindset when I'm in it. It makes me forget about whatever else is going on. It just makes me focus of this moment. There was more to this car than just driving it. It helped a balance in his life. No matter what was going on in his life, this car brought calmness to him again. And it's the reason why I've had it now for 10 years and why it doesn't leave my body ever. Specifically, he said, this is the only car that I can get into and just clear my thoughts. It almost like reset the palette in his head. And for some reason that struck with me, because every time I get in the car now, that's the feeling I get. For living in LA, for a very busy, chaotic workplace of anything, that car is pretty phenomenal to reset what I need to be doing and what I need to be thinking about. You have this one-on-one moment with this piece of machine that you can't just take lightly for either. You kind of have to be full attentive and aware, because it will come with frustration and it will be annoying when it breaks down and it will be great when it runs. I hold this responsibility now that means something to me. It's a family member to me. It's not like these are rare cars to have. I'm the owner of this thing that I appreciate and that I love driving around every day. It wasn't my first rodeo, so I was prepared enough to understand what I had to make this car the car of my dreams. 20 years ago, there was no YouTube. There was no looking up things, how to fix this, how to do this. You'd be reading out of this book of like 200 pages and I'd have no idea what I was doing. What's so great about these Mustangs is like, you need a Phillips and a crescent wrench or something. It's pretty amazing how easy it is to pull that thing apart. My goal was to appreciate what was achieved for them to make this car. You know, there wasn't a Fastback Mustang before this year. So for me, it was about retaining that, kind of respecting the owner before me, and somehow putting on my aesthetics of looks and design to go with it as well. I feel like my roots are so far into it that it's just always gonna be mine. The Mustang is always had that special place for me in my heart. And it connects me with so many people that I can't explain. But I mean, every time I stop at a gas station, there's an 11-year-old child who knows nothing what it is and stops and asks like 100 questions every time. And those moments are the most special moments to me, is look at that car and go, what is that? That makes me feel different. That's making me feel something I don't know how to explain.